What's going on, traders, and welcome to this week's episode of the Weekly Watchlist. Before we get going, I'd like to make your attention to the newsletter. If you're interested in receiving 5 to 10 swing trade ideas, head on into the link in the description and sign up there. Again, that goes out Sunday afternoons, and it's 5 to 10 swing trade ideas or stocks that I think have the potential to move this week. Without further ado, let's get into the analysis. We, as always, have the broad market, SPY, the Qs, and IWM. After that, we look at some core companies: Apple, Netflix, Tesla, Alibaba, Facebook, Nvidia, Microsoft, and Amazon. Alrighty, so hopping right in, as always, with our SPY weekly chart. You can see that we have this inverted hammer on the weekly, which to me would indicate we were more than likely going to make a move lower, and I would target, based on the weekly chart here, this area at 293.99, so 294 essentially is the highs, the consecutive highs we had here the past few weeks. I think a retest of that is more than likely based on this bar. If we zoom into the daily, you can see our week was sort of all over the place. We had a nice start, including this nice real rally off of some lows here on Wednesday. I think that was the FOMC day where, we didn't really... There's some crazy stuff going on the intraday charts. Anyways, followed up by Thursday with this inverted hammer, essentially showing some resistance up here at our all-time highs. No surprise there. But then Friday really getting hammered with the trade news and essentially some fundamental stuff going on in the market. So maybe the market sees the 50 SMA on the daily here on SPY, which comes into play a little bit sooner than our target here of 294. So that 50 SMA is right around 295 just about, so $1 higher there. That could be a nice target to the downside, but a retest of this resistance on the upside could be in store. So look for 302 on the upside, and if we move up through that level, again, we're targeting this resistance trend line that's a little bit further up, depending on what time of the week that happens. That could be at 305 or, a little later on in the week, 305.50. The Qs look slightly similar. However, you can see that we didn't quite make it up on Thursday to our recent or equal high here. So we could draw in something that looks a little bit like this as a resistance trend line, something like that to keep in mind on any upside plays. Again, I think the 50 SMA might be a good target considering all the selling there on Friday. And then anything lower than that is essentially this level here at 188.61. We did violate this level here. I think this level holds less significance now. We'll just sort of remove that one. We have a uptrending support trend line. If we break down below this, I would hope that this provides some bit of support. You can see that's coming from here. If that gives, things could get nasty, and then I would start using some of these as supports below us. So 182, 183 just about, based on this double bottom here. Lower than that would be, splitting the difference between this tail and the next one at 181.33, and then lower than that, 179.50, I'd call it, based on these lows. So it's 1, 2, and 3 sets of lows if this trend line gives. Very important trend line break here on IWM. You can see that we got above our resistance trend line where we had gotten rejected in the past once, twice, and then it off the chart shows the first time. But now we're getting a back test of it, which is a bullish signal. We are having some indecision around that point, so I think this could be a bull flag. We see a nice move up, consolidation, pullback, and then a nice move higher. So this is really, like I had talked about in the past, the key resistance area that we need to break through in order to see follow through on this move to the upside. And that resistance zone is sort of between 158 here, as you can see, and 160 just about, based on this upper level here. If we can get up through that, I think that there's potential for IWM to sort of carry the market forward. You can see that would put it in sort of a breakout territory. There's not much resistance in here. This is very emotional selling, just lots of red days in a row. I think a nice first target could be somewhere around here, right around 167 just about. So about a $7 move if we can get up through this resistance zone. Alrighty, starting our companies off as always with Apple. You can see that Friday was pretty impactful based on that trade news that came out. As you saw in the market, it had a nice down day, and Apple, being heavily influenced by what the market does, had a nice down day. I think that the move here is, again, to wait for it to come down to its support at 215.13. From there, it's going to sort of, depending on what time of the week, coincide with this support trend line that's in store, and I think that another bounce could continue from there. We do have a lower high being put in, so we need to see a higher low being formed from this set here. I'd say that's kind of like the key point there. So if this support holds, that's a good sign. Next step would obviously be to put in a higher high. For that to happen, we need to break through our 226.50 resistance from here, and then target our all-time high from this past October at 233. 173.47. That's almost a year ago now. So look for that to be a strong resistance if we see any sort of major swing to the upside. On the downside, if this resistance or support level gives, we're looking for that 50 SMA to act as support as it's going to continue to rise up and coincide with some of these price levels. Anything lower than that, I put this, or I mentioned this level earlier. We'll draw that one in. We do want to see these lower shadows in here offer some support at 211.50. Anything lower than that, you're going to sort of have to play it by ear based on some of these sets down in here. So I'd call 203.32 based on, price came down. That's sort of where this bounce and then retest and bounce again. So that's on the downside. Netflix also had a pretty ugly end of the week. You can see that we violated this very important support that we had down here, which led to a nice break to the downside. I'd say we're sort of out of our triangle now, so we'll get rid of that, clean up the chart a bit. And you can see that there's really nothing for Netflix to stop below until we get all the way down here at 231.58. I've said this for a long time now. I think the fundamentals of the company are sort of being shifted as more and more other competitors come out with free or better services or owning more of their own content. I just don't think there's much of a future here to see, a nice swing to the upside here on Netflix unless something drastically different happens within the company. So 231 on the downside, any sort of major move back up. Again, this looks like a triple top here, 1, 2, 3, right around 300. So any sort of move up, I would imagine that offers some strong resistance there. 50 SMA is going to start to coincide with it. So any sort of move or bounce to the upside, again, 300, strong resistance. Anything after that, this zone in here between 310 and 316, certainly strong resistance in there based on these two sort of tops, if you will. But again, I think the move here is more than likely lower. Tesla is sort of following the model of IWM and the small caps, if you will. We have this nice move up, a consolidation period, but we're still holding on to this support based on this previous high here, which is great to see. So I think the move here is to follow the trend, short-term trend that is, and make another move to the upside. Again, we are going to have to clear this key area on the chart of 253.54. If we can break back above that, I'd say the 200 SMA on the daily is a great target. That's going to start moving down slightly as we continue out throughout the week. Anything higher than that is sort of this gap fill area, actually, now that I'm looking at it. This big gap could be filled if we come into this 258.70 level, so keep that in mind. We'll draw on a price level there as a reminder, but that 200 is going to start to coincide with it. So again, I think that's a great target for the upside. If we do break down below this level here, 50 SMA is right there below us to sort of support, so I would imagine this offers some bit of semblance on the downside. Anything lower than that, we're looking at 229.69, and lower than that, I'd say the uptrend sort of ruined. The bull flag here is sort of ruined, but that's 219.50. Alibaba is rather surprising to me, especially with the trade war news coming out and being an Asian-based company, Chinese-based company. We have a hammer here actually off of a support level. So we finally broke above, found support on the retest, and I think the move here is to come up to this resistance trend line, depending again on what time of the week that is. That's 188.20. Could be 187.70. It's somewhere in that range. So again, targeting this trend line here. Any move to the downside, we want to see our support trend line act as support on the downside, obviously. But we really want to maintain this 179.37 level. If we go back down below that, then this is sort of like a look above and fail, if you will, in which case I would target these moving averages as a nice downside target. If they give and don't offer much support on the downside, we are looking at 164.08. So Facebook is sort of consolidating in a triangle now. You can see we have our rising support trend line. We have some resistance here at 191.20. I think the breakout above this puts it back up here at our next resistance level, right around 198.61. But you can see that's only based on these three tops here. If we get above that, I would target sort of this swing high area up here around 205.39. If we break down below this area though, and again, keep in mind that 50 SMA on the break to the upside. If we break down below, you can see our target is down here where we had this sort of triple bottom 1, 2, and a bunch of sort of mixed touches in here, but that's at 179.62 on the downside. If that gives, this is our sort of last ditch effort before this next one at 176 and then 172.99. So Nvidia looks pretty interesting here to me. It looks like it's one of two things. Either we're retesting this horizontal price level here at 173.47, or we move slightly lower, retest the 50 SMA and retest the backside of this resistance trend line before the next move up. So again, look for some support to start coming into play here. Either I think we get a bounce from some of this area in here around 169.27ish and then make a move higher, or if we break down below it, I would target the 200 SMA and then consider this a look above and fail again on the break of this trend line. And then target this 159.50-ish area based on the 200 SMA and coming back into the range. If this sort of goes sideways and gives, again, we're looking at our next support down below us at 148.10, and then the lower end or support trend line of the symmetrical triangle. On the upside, like I said, if we get this bounce, we're targeting this area first as the key resistance at 188.40. Anything higher is 192.95 based on some of our highs from in here. So Microsoft looks like it's starting to get some action again. We did enough sideways consolidation here, and it looks like this big gap up sort of started to get things going. We had the gap fill. To me, with the nice lower tail on the gap fill there, prices closed higher. This to me indicates that yes, buyers are still in Microsoft, and I would consider that a break of this level up here, if we could get it, would lead to more all-time highs. Again, we're playing whole and half dollars on the upside. Anything on the lower side, we want to see the 50 SMA act as support. You can see it's sort of chopped around that area. Of course, the support trend line wants to be intact. If that's violated, we're looking at 130.67. If that's violated, then I'd say I would probably hold off on a longer-term Microsoft trade, just because it would be a nice topping, rounding pattern if we broke down below this. Sort of no longer putting in all-time highs, the trend just wouldn't be as clear in my opinion. So Amazon has essentially just gone sideways throughout the past couple of weeks, so everything I've talked about in the last couple of videos still holds up. We had this sort of look above and fail back into the range, so now we're targeting the bottom side of this range, so that's right around 1751. 1751 on the downside if the 200 SMA gives here, which is this green line. If that gives, this is sort of like a key support here. If this one gives, then I think prices come all the way back down to 1672, as I've been saying. However, if we get the breakout to the upside, we do have to clear the 50 SMA. If that clears and some of this resistance in here clears, then the move is up to here at 1950, just based on some of this emotional selling and very little resistance to be offered in that in this zone. So there's very little structure in here, I guess is what I'm saying. So very clear targets on Amazon. It's either got to break out of this range one way or another. If it comes down to the bottom and gives, 1672. If it bobbles around at the top and breaks the big following in the market breaks to the upside, I would say 1950. So that's going to wrap up this week's episode of the Weekly Watchlist. If you enjoyed the video, leave it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, you want to know more about what I'm talking about, leave them down below. As always, you can subscribe to the new newsletter, 5 to 10 swing trade ideas, sent out on Sunday afternoons. That's the first link in the description. And as always, I wish you a green trading week.